Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of Puff Puff Planted. We got a really cool one for you today. It's actually a two-part series we're going to do, and it's all about rosin and solventless. So we got a really special guest with us today. You know us already, Kevin Suratowski, Victoria Nichols, your host today. But we got a really cool guest. His name is Ryan Lecates. You can actually check him out on Instagram and follow him at rosin.ryan. That's his nickname. We call him Rosin Ryan. But he's an industry expert in solventless. He's been in the game for a long time. And we're going to answer a lot of cool questions, kind of tell you how it's made, and just, like I said, talk everything solventless. So, yeah, let's get started. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, how's it going, you guys? Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely, man. We're happy to have you. Hey, why don't you start by telling the listeners and just who you are. You told me a cool story about kind of why you came into the industry in general, but why you became so passionate about solventless. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your history and what you do.
So my name is Ryan Lecates, probably better known as Rosin Ryan on the social media. Okay. I've been making hash now for 14 years of my life and been involved in cannabis for nearly half my life now. And moved out to Colorado to legally get into the industry. Started off as a hydrocarbon guy, but very, very quickly switched over to solventless as I found that I don't know, it really was just helpful to my health. And I just noticed a lot more benefits to smoking the flower back in the day, like I always was. It's been a long journey, but been in the legal game now for almost 8 years, and it's been amazing. I've learned so much just from growing and working in the legal, industry itself. Has taught me so much more than I could have ever learned, on my own, having that, like a lab as a stepping stone essentially into creating something. Like a lot of people don't get that opportunity. Um, Coming from somebody that made hash at home and getting involved in a laboratory setting is like a massive improvement in all the steps it takes to make really good hash.
So I got a question real quick. I have to imagine, like we'll call it the legacy market, right? Back in the day. So were you like before presses? I mean, what were we talking? Like hair straighteners? What was it? What were they? What were you doing?
All right, so going back to the very beginning, it was grinder hash, alcohol stuff. Eventually, it moved into hydrocarbons, doing like open blasting in glass tubes, essentially back in the day.
So BHO
Um,
oil, right? So everybody that doesn't know
BHO,
BHO oil. Psh.
yes, exactly. Hydrocarbon, BHO, butane extracted hash was like my very first step into like I don't know, high level, high quality hash making essentially. I was doing dry sift before, I was doing like the grinder keef and stuff like that, but to clean it up that extra step and seeing what I was seeing on Instagram, this was like years ago when Instagram was first getting started, seeing what all these guys in like California were doing and Colorado and stuff. Being a kid from Florida trying to make hash, that was like the first step into anything worth dabbing essentially. So open blasting with butane and stuff like that. My all my personal like scoops were essentially going into hash making back in the day. I wasn't selling it or anything. It was purely for like medicinal use. It was a really crazy time, 2013, 2012, with everyone kind of getting into that hydrocarbon and butane extraction. I just wanted to do it myself. And being in Florida, there's only a few things that you could do. Um, I didn't really want to get involved in that black market lifestyle too much. So I was like, you know what? If I really want to get involved in this, I got to move to Colorado and do this for real.
Okay, and so question about that, or actually not question, but comment for the listeners too. We got to keep remembering. We wanna basically tell them what we mean with all these terms,
Okay.
right? And also demystify for them how it's easy to actually consume some of this stuff. So you said dabbable, or you said dabbable concentrates, we'll call them, right? So for everybody out there, dabbable concentrates is something we're going to go into today. There's rosin versus resin, which we'll cover in a second, but it's the extracted or pressed plant compounds and cannabinoids inside of the plant.
The concentrate.
The concentrate. So that's what we mean when we say dabbable, right? So just basically a different method than smoking the standard way. But how about, would you kind of give us a quick brief overview for the listeners, just like rosin versus resin? Like when we say solventless, what are we talking about exactly?
So rosin is going to be essentially anything pressed with it's only heat and pressure essentially used to make cannabis oil. So you have these plates, these heated plates, and no matter what you're pressing, you can press flour, you can press dry sift, you can press ice water hash. You're essentially using these heated plates to squeeze down on the bud or the trichomes essentially. And like little water balloons, there's THC and terpenes inside. So what you're using is the plates to essentially burst these trichomes, the water balloons, and you're letting the liquid pour out, the terpenes, the THCA, all the cannabinoids essentially. So without the use of hydrocarbons, without the use of any chemicals really, you're able to produce a very high THC percentage cannabis oil.
Okay.
And so typically too, with like the solventless, your yield is a lot less. So, people sometimes see, the sticker price, in Michigan right now on solventless products is more expensive than, the alternative. So, a lot of times people see this and they're like, what's the difference, right? Like I'm going to dab it, I'm going to get high. But for me on the retail side, it's explaining to them that like, while this isn't the cleanest extraction method you can use, it also yields less than what you could, kind of anticipate out of doing it in a different manner. Mm-hmm. So people are like, oh, that makes a little bit more sense. If you have less, you're gonna have to charge more for it. It's more of a premium product.
Yeah. And you know what, to that point too, I think it matters what market you're in. I was talking to somebody the other day about this. There was a medical patient, just somebody that I ended up on the phone with, and he had a rough go. He has kind of a rare autoimmune disease, and he was really wanting to get into solventless processing. And the biggest thing for him was in his market, it was a very new market, I believe, and he didn't really know who to trust in terms of producers, right? In some markets, it's early on, they have to mature a little bit. So like the consumer can feel safe. So what I was getting at there is like, in general, just for everybody, right? In a standard market that's been legal for a bit, it's a matured market, at the end of the day, any of the concentrates you get will be safe because of the strict standard and compliance that everybody has to have. But it's kind of to each their own. So for me personally, I don't know what your thoughts of this are, but for me, I found solventless and more like of a BHO oil gave me a slightly different experience. A BHO oil more like I want to go clean the house, like really awake and alive and feeling, I guess, the head high, cerebral, right? And and then for me, solventless is like, man, it has been a long day. I want to chill on my couch, relax, and really feel that high.
Well, I feel like a lot of that, we didn't even, Ryan hasn't really touched on resins yet, right? But, a lot of that too is we always circle back to the terpenes. And I think that's the best part about like solventless and a lot of these like concentrates is that you're like preserving the best part of the plant. And so that's my favorite part about like solventless is it's like the most similar to a flower high for me. Like flower is my favorite type of high. So like that's what when, people are like more curious about it. And like I say, it's a cleaner extraction process. Like I said, I wasn't saying the other ones aren't clean, but this is absolutely one of the cleanest methods that you can get, a concentrate into your body that way. Because people are constantly curious, like why are hash rosin pods half grams and why are they double the price? This doesn't make sense to me. What's going on?
Why are they mostly half grams? Actually, I never really.
I think a lot of it's maybe the viscosity of the concentrate, or we'll let Ryan touch on that.
And honestly, so imagine you have a gram of hash oil that you're reheating from the bottom. It's essentially like reheating that oil over and over. The smaller amount that you have in that gram, the longer it's going to taste exactly like the beginning of that cart. So you have a gram cart, essentially it's going to lose flavor over time because you're reheating that cart so often. By the time you're done with a half gram in the gram cart, it's tasting different than when you started.
Yeah, it'll taste burnt.
It's almost, exactly. It starts to just burn that cart where the half gram, it's only been heated up so many times, it's like half the amount of that gram. So.
Well, and that's what I always tell people too, because not even just with rosin, it goes with that for resin too. And people are always curious, I want more. The consumer is like value driven. So they see like a 1 gram distillate cart or even a 2 gram distillate cart now sitting next to like a half gram rosin or a half gram resin. And they're like, that just doesn't make sense. And I'm like, the way I explain it too is I'm like, you need less of this anyway.
Oh yeah.
To get the high that you're trying to achieve, like you need less of it. And that's not, you don't need a chief on this. This rosin pod's like taking a dab versus ripping your vape cart. And like, those are just totally different highs. And the market's like, I'm glad in Michigan is coming around to like a more educated consumer. So people are starting to reach more, like realizing they spent the money once and are realizing like, holy crap, that was way better of a like experience than this distillate cart that I got.
I know you were about to say holy balls and then you changed it to holy crap.
I did, holy crap.
I totally
I almost said holy and then
I saw the but
it's all about the terps. It's all about the terps. So yeah, you have 1 half gram cart, you go through it, lose maybe 1 to 2% of terps. You have a gram cart, you're losing 5 to 6% of terps. By the end of the cart, it's tasting burnt. It's getting you nice and high, but it's not having that synergistic effect with the terpenes at that point.
Yeah, and I feel like it gets harsher just on my throat in general, and the heat. It just and you're like, this is horrible.
We are bringing up so many good topics in part 2 that I have covered in this, like solventless pre-rolls. This is going to be fun.
We'll go right into that too. But how about Ryan, explain to us. So you explain to us what rosin is and how we make rosin. Like, what is resin, right? What's the difference?
So resin, hydrocarbon, essentially. You're using, butane, pentane, hexane, essentially. It's stripping the plant, not in a mechanical way. Whereas ice water hash and rosin, we're purely taking the trichome heads. You wash something with butane, and it's stripping essentially the cannabinoids from the plant. That's why the yields are higher. That's why you generally have a little bit more of like a liquid consistency with the live resin and stuff like that.
It's just pulling it out.
So much more. It's so much more from the plant that you're actually getting, where you really need like washing genetics to throw something in ice and water. You need to know that the trichome heads are ripened there. When you throw something in a hydrocarbon, it doesn't really matter. You can throw the most heavy sativas with the smallest little heads and the fattest stalks on there. It's going to strip absolutely everything. And it's really a matter of preference. Like, as Kevin said, you could have like a hydrocarbon extraction that's nearly just as clean as a solventless, but there's always going to be people that look at organic versus, regular vegetables and stuff. There's conscious people about
absolutely
people are conscious about what they're putting in their bodies nowadays. So
absolutely,
solventless has really taken this massive leap in that sense.
Yeah, and I feel like too hitting the market a lot is like CO2, and that is something that is like confusing to some consumers because a lot of people who extract using CO2 say like CO2 solventless extraction, and so a lot of people are like, is that solventless? Because it doesn't sound solventless. So that's maybe a question I have for you, because it's something too that I know sometimes you have to like winterize products to get them back into a cart form or something like that. So there's a lot of when you see that on a package, I'm like, you're listing solventless right after you list a solvent, basically. So I'm
it's
very
used
confused.
in post process.
Exactly
Yeah, there's a lot of these labels that can kind of get confusing, especially with solventless itself, because people are also like, well, water is acting as like kind of a solvent in this process, or it's, doing something that's terpenes. Well, we're just using ice and water essentially as a transport vessel, right? Hydrocarbon essentially is actually like leaching all these cannabinoids from the plant and really carrying it over. So it can get confusing when you're talking about, CO2 and that kind of stuff. It is technically solventless as well, but the process it goes through is not just like some type of mechanical separation. You know what I mean? It's actually going through like this solvent process as well. You're not just physically removing the trichs, which a lot of people, they see that as like the true solventless process. You know what I mean? The ice water hash, the sift, or just going straight from flour into rosin.
Yeah.
So let me. Oh, sorry. I have to know this. Okay, this is a stupid theory I have, but I'm gonna ask you if you think there's any validity to it. So the one thing I wondered about solvent versus solvent base, because just so everybody knows, I love them both probably 50-50, honestly. I was purely a hydrocarbon guy 6 months ago, or BHO oil, and ever since I started trying some of the really good solventless brands and products, I love them. So I'd probably say I split it 50-50, honestly. But so I was wondering, like, with the solvent based, right, we do know that BHO, butane, propane, they are good solvents, like their nature's good solvents, right? And they're made in a lot of beauty products, pharmaceutical, other extracts, things of that nature.
Even food grade.
But I wonder, Yeah, food grade. I've always wondered if maybe the difference between them two is just the difference in what it pulls. Like, do those pull out certain things that are inside of that plant matter that a solventless may not get? Things that maybe we don't recognize on an HPLC or another device yet. Very small. Well, even that, but very micro, small cannabinoids that may make a difference. I don't know. It's just,
Yes,
I don't
yes,
know where that came
definitely.
from.
So
Yeah.
it's what hydrocarbon doesn't pull, essentially. So when you are extracting ice water hash and making rosin, when you have the trichome heads, you still are leaving behind that membrane of the trichome head, essentially. You have like a little bit of minor fats and lipids that are inherently involved in solventless that you don't get with a hydrocarbon extraction. That exactly, like you said earlier, kind of like aids to that high that's more like a flower high, that more sedative, like heavy kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Those fats and lipids are not found in hydrocarbon. That's why it's so clear and like just
What
it's
it
like that
doesn't
head
pull. I
high.
like that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's more of what it doesn't pull than what it's pulling. You're leaving behind so much when it comes to ice water hash, and that's why you have to put it in these little like micron filtration bags for when you're
Mm-hmm.
making rosin, so that you leave those behind to try to clean that up a little bit. If you were to even just dab that ice water hash, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to get you even more of that flower high. It's very,
Yeah.
very heavy. Yes, you know what I'm
I'm
talking
in.
about.
And
So
hey,
yeah,
I'm in.
if you hear what he's talking about too, all these fancy terms we're using, you come back for part 2. We're going to talk exactly about that. We're going through the whole process of how you make it. We're going to start with a bunch of fresh frozen flour. We're going to walk through, without giving away any super secrets, we're going to walk through just generally how to do it, so you guys can kind of break it down in your head and understand. And yeah, I see he's already got
It's just
some toys there.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's just
I
one of
love
those
it.
things that, on the retail side, trying to explain to someone why a product is more expensive, yet testing lower in THC, yet probably higher in terpenes. And, it's
yes.
something too
So
that it speaks for itself. Like, you open the jar and someone is like, oh my God, like that smells like flour. Like
Yeah.
that smell is
Or
like
better.
pungent. Yeah.
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 and it
What
also
were you going to say,
has to
Ryan?
do with the starting quality of the
Mm-hmm.
material too. So a lot of the solventless, like
Wait, Flash
high.
Grant. Right here for you, buddy. I had to. I had to for
Perfect.
the
Fire
episode.
in, fire out.
Yeah. The
So
importance of good
that
input.
is it is the most important. When it comes to solventless, you can't just throw in trash and expect some high quality rosin to just appear out of nowhere.
Yep.
This plant needs to be grown with trikes in mind. It needs to be harvested very carefully with the trikes in mind. It can't be freeze dried. It can't be mishandled. You could throw in a bag of some really high quality cannabis and send it to hydrocarbon. And no matter how it was handled, it is going to strip those cannabinoids like no other. If you mishandle cannabis used for solventless extraction, you say you're going to wash something. If you're just bucking it off the plant, if you're freeze drying, or if you're vacuum sealing your bags and destroying all those trichomes that you've worked so hard to grow, you've now destroyed essentially your product. So another thing people look at when it comes to high-end solventless rosin and hash essentially is it had to come from this amazing source. Otherwise, it could
Yeah.
never exist. There's no
It's-
cleaning up. You can't CRC solventless hash. You
I
can't
was gonna.
you
I was
can't
literally
make it
about to bring up
cleaner when it.
CRC. You
Yeah.
can't CRC
So it's
solventless.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no way to really like hide your imperfections when it comes to solventless. If you have a good
That's
grow,
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
it's going to make good
Well,
hash. And if you don't
and isn't
if you
it
don't have a good
too?
grow, it's not.
It's very strain specific too, right? Like certain strains
Yes,
grow
yes.
larger trichomes. So if your whole goal is to create solventless products out of that, then you're going to want to be very specific about the plants that you're growing and the strains that you're choosing or the cultivars. Yeah.
And you know what? So when it comes to when we talk about these different strains, right? We know we go all the way back to landrace strains in the can. Tell us a little bit, brief, high level, the history of water hash. Like, how did they start doing it? They were already smoking all this good stuff, right? Like, what made them?
Exactly.
It's like,
So
who was sitting around saying, "Let's put this in ice and water and agitate it to knock off"? Like, it's crazy.
yeah, it is. So before we even get into that, it goes way back. I mean, hundreds and even 1,000 years ago. Cannabis in its first uses, like solventless based, they used to literally just take the cannabis, beat it against rocks, rub it against their hands. They were essentially just scraping Keef
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
thousands of years ago. And I mean, Egyptians, it's literally, we found like a bong that was like 1,200 years old or something
Yeah, a
crazy, even
gold
older
one,
than that.
right?
Like literally, it's absolutely insane. People have been
I
using
want a
cannabis
gold
now for
bong.
thousands of years, and the first applications of it were completely solventless. They were literally removing the trichs and the resin manually, and then adding it to food and other things. Like I think cannabis was first eaten before it was ever smoked, and then from there it was
No
like
way. Why do you say that? That's
I,
crazy.
I just truly
I mean,
I
that's
truly think
awesome though.
like people. I just really think that thousands of years ago, someone discovered this plant as we're discovering herbs and
Yeah,
things to
just
eat and
their
stuff like
natural
that.
thing to eat it, not to smoke it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
Exactly. Well, you throw it in some, a heated vat or whatever, and you're getting these psychedelic experiences and stuff like that. And now there's even, theories that, stories in the Bible, the burning bush and stuff like that, could have potentially been
Oh
psychedelic
it,
yeah.
plants back in the day and
it
all this
just,
other stuff.
it's also
It's
wild.
ingrained in yeah, it's ingrained in our DNA for thousands of years. So
Yeah,
it's that part of it. Solventless has been yeah, it's been made for a long time. But
I
honestly, ice water hash is kind of a thing that just started, in the 60s, 70s, I want to say, with people
Interesting.
using ice and water as a vessel to cleanly remove the trichs. So, and think of instead of smearing it or just shaking it off a plant, you now have a clean vessel to keep them intact and collect.
Interesting.
Yeah, see, I destroyed my mom's like favorite
Yeah.
mortar and pestle growing up because I didn't have a grinder.
Her what?
Her mortar and pestle.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
like to like
Oh,
You
yeah.
just
smash
rubbing
up
it
herbs.
all in there, yeah.
And I just like was like, I need something to grind my weed up, and she wasn't home, so I just like threw my weed in there, and I was just like grinding. I destroyed it. Like I was like, I tried to like clean it out, like it was just like keef and like there was just resin stuck in
It's
this.
just like stained in the side, yeah.
She's like, what is
Yeah,
that?
she's like, what was in this? I'm like, I don't know. Like
What if
that
she was making,
oregano
like, some
was
mint?
really
Yeah,
like
right?
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
mixing
fresh.
some mint and
That's-
oregano.
Yeah,
that
Mom.
basil was
That was that was super fresh, Mom. But it was one of those things that I didn't have a way to do it, and it kind of cracked me up because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking back in the day, like that's literally what they were doing, just like smashing rocks on each other. You know, that stuff's wild to
exactly.
me. I always think
Yeah,
about it like,
collecting that resin and I'm guessing. I mean, they used to literally smoke it and eat it way back in the day. So
well, they had to have cooked with
Wait,
it,
what
right?
did they
Like,
roll it
thinking-
in?
They had to.
Is that story about the zigzag thing
I
true?
bet you they made a
Do you
bowl
kn-
out of like a rock or something.
They might, but do you know
no,
the
seriously,
thing?
there's been stone and rock bowls for
Yeah,
so
and
long.
palm leaves. People definitely smoked out of like plant leaves. They had
But
to.
we
have
need
put this shit in
somebody
there.
to validate this story for us. If somehow
Exactly.
zigzag comes across this episode, validate this. I swear I heard this. This is true. I heard that the guy on zigzag. Wait, no, I don't have my socks on. I have zigzag socks that I wear, and I actually love them. But there's this guy on there, right? And he has that. I don't know what that hat's called. It's like a back hat that covers his hair. I don't know. But anyways, he's on there. You know what I'm saying? If you Google the zigzag character, it's this old guy. And I heard that he was like a Revolutionary War soldier or something of that sort, and he would roll joints or like tobacco something. He would roll something. I don't know if it was joints. Might have been tobacco. But he took the ammo pouch that they used to have way back in the day, and it started from like he just figured he'd cut the ammo pouch and rolled it up and smoked it, and then ended up starting zigzag. That's what I heard. It might
That
be a
would be kinda
myth,
cool.
but I need a validator. So if anybody knows that story.
That would be
that
interesting.
would be-
I feel
that would
like
be really
you.
cool.
Somebody told me. I forgot who. I'll remember.
They
and
have to
I'll
have
tell
found
you.
a million ways to
I'm
smoke.
not making that up.
Back in the day, because
Yeah.
I remember being a teenager and finding a million ways to smoke. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that
Oh,
they had
yeah.
their own ways of going about and doing it, And it's one of those things I always laughed and thought, like, who looked at the first banana and was like, we should eat that, right? Like, so it's probably the same thing with weed,
Exactly.
Yeah, you look at it, and who knows if it could have killed them? Who knows? But at the same time, they loved it. So here we are.
All right, so I got one for you here. I know we kind of talked about this already, right? But I want to hear everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
So why might somebody choose a solventless concentrate? Is there, and there might not be an answer to this, or there may not be. So tell us either way. But like, is there a certain medical benefit you'd see to it, or like I think you mentioned earlier, maybe if somebody's maybe they have a disorder where they're very conscious of what they put in their body. Anything else we're missing?
Man, it's I wish I could say it was more of a scientific, like backed up fact, but to be honest with you, man, the hydrocarbons they're very clean. They're very, very clean.
Hmm.
Most states are even like they set standards where it's like less than 100 parts per million, which is literally
Hmm.
less than if you were to smoke a bowl, you'd be getting 5 times the amount of butane ingested in your body just from flicking a lighter. So
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
wow.
Michigan, it's
extremely
10,000
yeah,
Yeah.
and med.
it's yeah, exactly. So it's truly personal preference and the starting material. It's exactly what we just talked about. The fact that they know that something hasn't been cleaned up. They know for a fact the starting material didn't contain any microbials, mold, anything like that that could have potentially been cleaned up with hydrocarbons. It's just like a safety of mind thing, really, and
Yeah.
knowing its source, the starting material source. So
So
that's
wait,
that's
and you
that's what I truly believe.
okay, and you talked about the source too. So like, excuse me, the source is important and the process is important, right? So just high
Very.
level because don't we can't give it away yet. We got to make them come back for episode 2, but we're gonna go over how it's made in episode 2. But in a general sense, right? How has the technology evolved over like from when people started doing it in the '60s with whatever vessel, if you want to call it that, they used? Like, how has technology evolved? Like, what makes it different now? Just what bigger scale, different method of doing it? Like, where are we at with that?
I think it's a hybrid of technology and education. So the more we learn about the plant and about trichomes themselves,
Hmm.
the more we've been able to kind of dial in exactly what we need to make material wise and equipment wise to get this the best we can, right? So, the past few years has really been just this massive like educational like wave of people actually truly realizing, hey, we're not bud farmers anymore. We're trike farmers now. This isn't about how much plant mass we have and how big the plants are. It's about how many trikes we have on the plant, the ratio, and what these trikes are shaped like and stuff like that. The more we learned about that, the equipment follows. Now we know, how finely do we need to separate and filter this material? How much do we need to agitate this material without breaking up the bud to the point where chlorophyll is being introduced, the green, where it gets to taste real bad, or hay-like, you know what I mean?
That's what
It's
produced the
it's
most
it's
smoke too, right? And when you're smoking a J, chlorophyll. Am I
exact
wrong?
exact.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. Like most of the time when you're actually smoking a J, it's the plant
Mhm.
material that's burning, essentially. So
Yeah.
by eliminating plant material and having just the cleanest trike heads, we are now making cleaner hash than we ever have before. Just like say, you have teeth in a grinder. It's essentially like we're looking at this and being like, how can we clean this up? How can we separate what's green in here
Hmm.
versus purely trikes? And
From trichomes. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. So the ice water hash, as we've learned about temperatures and how trike heads react in cold environments and stuff like that, it's education and equipment combined that's allowed us to get how far we are now. And now we're
Yeah.
like at the point where we're realizing exactly what temperatures the heads burst, how long the agitation needs to be, like what level of agitation you need to create like full melt. Like there's all this stuff now that we have recorded data on that at peer pressure essentially like this is 30 years of knowledge now that we have into this equipment to essentially make the best hash possible with your starting material.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking like how all any hydrocarbon in our market that's being tested, like I was saying, like he said, recreational, it's 100,000 parts per million or less. And then on our med side, it's actually 10,000 parts per million or less. So,
Yep.
hydrocarbons are safe to consume, right? But we're also, we mentioned before, CRC, right? So do we really know there's companies out there and they're not required to label their
No, they are
products
not
as
required to
CRC'd
label anything.
or remediated or anything. So, it's one of those
Exactly,
things
exactly.
that is a part for me as a consumer why I personally choose to lean solventless because you can't CRC it. I know the product I'm looking at has and a lot of times people don't realize too, like, while it may look more pretty and diamondy and clear and like white, like I want it to look like it came from a marijuana plant. First of all, like a clean plant, but then two, like I love my terpenes and to keep my terpenes intact. So I feel like when you CRC a product, like you're just destroying its flavor, its smell, like a
Yes.
lot of my favorite part about doing concentrates. And so that's something why I'm never to the consumer like that looks CRC'd, but like when I open a product and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, there's just no way. Like they ran this through a CRC machine. Like when you
I
see
can
something
tell
that's
instantly.
just clear, like absolutely see-through as a concentrate, I'm like,
you're like, that's impossible.
That's not, why does this look like?
Well,
You know,
okay.
when it looks that good, it doesn't smell like anything. You're like, what's wrong
No.
here?
Yeah, and it has no nose on anything. So that's why, we keep a lot of our, with resins, you've got, you're on the spectrum now too of explaining this, but the live resin versus the cured resin. And so people are always like, what's the difference? And, you're using live plant matter versus cured plant matter to make these products. And, you find a difference in terpenes there, and you find a difference in high and effects just that way as well. Like, we know the smart consumers when they come in and they're like, I'm looking for a live resin, or I'm looking for a live rosin, and there's cured rosins and all of that. So the market is becoming more educated. So for me, it's fun because I've been in it 5-6 years and watching people just come in and be like, I want your highest THC. Now they're coming in, they're like, can I have the highest terpene content? And you're like,
it's crazy to see. You're like, yes.
I'm like, you know what terpenes are? Like, I'm always trying to like crash course people on terpenes. And I'm like, do you want to know in 5 minutes what the essential oil of the marijuana plant is?
Tell you.
So it's been so much fun to be able to explain that to people, and my staff, as bud tenders, as we call them and stuff, come up to me and they're like, you explain the difference between these for me. And what are these, in what sucks now is there are some products coming into our market while, people are enjoying them. They're like partial distillate and then like a tiny portion of like resin or rosin, and they're calling them like rosin carts, but they're like 10% rosin.
Wait,
or like 10%
labeled?
resin.
Do they break it down?
As long as it's like a certain percentage of the makeup of the product, they can label it as that. And so it's something that is confusing to the consumer price wise. And like, because they're seeing this product come out for half the price of an actual resin or an actual rosin product, and they're like, this doesn't. Is that something in Colorado? Do you guys have that out there where it's like a partial?
So very luckily, we in Colorado. I mean, we're probably one of the oldest markets in the country, so we see a lot of more. I don't want to say educated consumers and brands, but to be realistic, we do. We don't see a lot of people trying to get away with that stuff because they know they can't out here. If you label something as solventless and it's not solventless, people are going to find out here and be very upset. So to be very transparent,
the jury of their peers
in your process, exactly. To be very transparent in your process is a great thing. If you're trying to hide something or label something as, a solventless when it's really not, people are going to find out and they're going to be pissed.
Yeah, we're at the point in our market where the consumers are becoming more educated, but they're not extreme. They're not there yet. So these companies can still kind of push the envelope on what they're putting out. So, as someone who does all the purchasing for my stores, it's like, I have to be more conscious about what I'm buying because, this is this is a distillate cart with live resin terps. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, that is just a distillate cartridge with cannabis terpenes.
Exactly. It's all just mixed together and you're just like, what is this truth?
Yeah. And so people are buying it. They're like, oh, I'm getting a live resin cart. I'm like, no, you're not. You're getting like a distillate cart with some like boof in it. And like, it just it's one of those things that I have to walk the line of realizing that might be okay for our consumer market right now. And that might not be something that they hate. And it's, I'm still like, it might be a step up from just a plain distillate cart, but gosh, like just jump into the live resins and the rosins and just like give it a try. Like I said, we have very saturated markets here. I'm sure you're familiar with that, but saturated markets are a competitive market, so very price driven, and companies are coming out trying to be as low as possible in price. And so for us, it's one of those things where I see people want 12 for $100 on distillate cartridges, and it's just like you see the resins and the rosins like falling to the wayside because people are value driven. And I'm like, you're not going to get like the product or experience you're like looking for. Yeah, you fly through and you skyrocket tolerance. And so, for me, solventless is just all around a better high. Like, I'm never going to push someone to only smoke solventless. There are some really awesome concentrate companies in Michigan, like I'll shout them out. Harbor Farms in Michigan is, they do tissue culture on all of their like strains. So they're super, super consistent on like when they have a strain, you smoke it from this month to 6 months down the road, like you're going to get the same high from it. And the terpene content on their concentrates are up to like 11%. So like they have some like, and they list all their terpenes. Yeah, they list they breed for terpenes. That's what they do. So they breed all their strains, and it's one of those things where, and they're hydrocarbon, right? So I'm like,
Country Boy Farms too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I love their stuff. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm a rosin girl, but like if I'm gonna go smoke a hydrocarbon, it's probably gonna be a Harbor Farms, or it's gonna be like a brand where they list their terpenes. Like if they list their terpenes, they care about what they're doing. And so that's something too in our market that isn't like standard. It's not required, of course, but companies are starting to realize that that is a way to set themselves apart, because people are coming in and asking for terpy product. So,
another one too that I'll give a quick shout out to as well. And by the way, we have no affiliation with these people. We're just giving you some straight up some stuff, right? Humblebee, they were really good. I enjoyed them.
Also like Three Lefts and Trap House.
Three Lefts and Trap House were awesome.
I've got some of their like rosin actually chilling here. There's some of their stuff we can look at here. But I mean, it's one of those things where on their packaging alone, it lists their major terpenes. So like limonene, myrcene, caryophyllene, like all those kind of terpenes, and they list the percentage of what they've got in there. So like for me, that's something that some companies will list like total terpenes, and then you got companies like Three Lefts that's coming out and like listing their specific terpenes and their terpene profile, and you're like, oh, they're testing for this, So that's something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's great to see more testing, terpenes and stuff. Essentially, when you're like labeling that on the box too, and people can be educated on the terpenes, that's even better.
Yeah. And that's,
with the craft market too that we're talking about here, this is my prediction. I think you're gonna see over the next few years. Right now, when we first started, it was craft, right? Then expanded from craft to commercial. Everybody went high throughput. In my opinion, I think that craft is also coming back too. And to be clear, right, the high throughput commercial game also matters. Why? Because we have to be fair. Some people have a certain budget that they can spend on marijuana. It doesn't mean anything like what they have. It's just that's what they decide to spend on a recreational activity like that, or medical, whatever it may be, right? But there's only a portion of that, right? So I think the craft market coming back is actually going to help the industry. It's going to let smaller players come in and make a difference by paying close attention to what they make, and that's okay. And then we'll have both price points and types of product for everybody. But I think in order to get there, and I just want to tease an upcoming episode. We have one, I think, next, hopefully, that's going to be all on devices, smoking devices, or dabbable devices, vaporizers, things of that nature, because I think one of the biggest things when we talk about all these, you see the jars that we have, you see maybe a movie, I don't know, a show, but you think of this big glass rig with a torch and a this and a that. It's not all like that. There's ways to consume these in many different ways with many different devices that work for you if you want it small and concealed and without a lot of smell or smoke, and you don't want to travel with a big box, right? There's something for everybody. And I will say, I think the device manufacturing in general in the space has got much stronger lately, and a lot of new entrants into the market to consume these type of products because they can put them in a vaporizer or consume it in an edible, whatever it may be, right? Well, I guess an edible is not a device. That was stupid, but you know what I meant with that. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was, I think as the devices grow and get better and become more convenient, then people will consume concentrates more. And lastly, concentrates are such a small portion of the market right now, but it's so big. We're starting to see 1-2% increases in those. I mean, that's just going to blow this whole thing up. There's just so much awesome stuff I think we have to learn from this.
A lot of it too is that, people are consuming flower primarily, right? And then vape carts, and their tolerances are like skyrocketing. And so people are like coming around, they're like smoking flower, and they're like, this 30% didn't even touch me. And it's like, yeah, because you're consuming so much. And so then they're like, what can I do to get more high? And it's like concentrates.
What can I do?
You have to switch to concentrates. And so that's something too that people realize, like, it may seem like a more expensive upfront cost, but you need less of it and it lasts a longer time. So those are things that, on the retail side, I love to be able to obviously get someone high, but I also love to be able to help them medicinally and manage their pain. Because at a certain point, if they're using it for medicinal purposes to manage pain and the flower's not doing it, I always jump to like a concentrate. Like I don't turn people on to distillate cartridges. I just hate them, whatever. It's a personal vendetta I have, but it's not my thing. And I'm just because I love weed, it's not my thing. So, and that's the way that I look at it. But switching someone to concentrates, I never want to jump and be like, try solventless. Like I want them to try a concentrate, get comfortable with it. And then they're like, how can I get cleaner from here? Like, how can I get a better high from here? And that's
trying new things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's my favorite part about concentrates is that they're flavorful. Like that's where you
Oh,
get
I love
like,
the smell. That's the best part when you open one.
I'm
the first
literally,
time.
you smell this room right now. It smells like weed.
And hey, listen, I gotta say too. I mean, I'm not just saying this, and we're close. So like, I gotta give some street cred and some cred to Michigan, right? We do have a cool market here. It is established. We got a lot of awesome processors. I will say on the solventless side specifically of things, I have had some very, very great stuff from Colorado. Everybody always told me you guys did. I don't know what it is. You do have a little special flavor in Colorado when it comes to solventless.
It's probably the way you guys are growing your. I mean, what you're doing at this point, you've learned. I think we're coming around in the Michigan market to where people are like really ironing out their solventless production and products and stuff, and the prices. You're seeing the price starting to come down on like the wholesale side to be more like to make more sense. I mean, it was like what we would buy wholesale solventless for is what you would sell a full gram of hydrocarbon at retail. So like people were like, there's just no way I'm paying $80 for a gram of concentrate. Like I'm not doing that. So now it's starting to come down to where it's $15 more than a hydrocarbon concentrate, and people are willing to make that jump, to make that switch to like, I'll finally try it out. Like what is solventless? They're curious, they want to know. So it's something that I think takes a lot of like he mentioned, like Ryan mentioned, it's an education piece, not only on like the processing side of things, but also on like the retail side. Like it's up to my staff to educate the consumers on like what we're looking at, what we're selling, what is this, why is solventless, and so
training video right here.
Yeah, dude, exactly, I'm gonna have to watch this, but the biggest part about it is that they want to avoid, steering a customer to a high, priced item because they're scared, they're not going to want it, or they're going to be like, you're price gouging me. But I'm like, if you can educate the consumer on why this is a higher priced item and what they're looking at, like you get way better feedback from people. They're more willing to try it. They know it. Like we have, one of my top selling gummies now, because it's the new in the market, is hash rosin gummies. So like we're gonna touch on that.
I bought some today.
Yeah, people love
Which
them.
one did I buy? The cherry ones?
Yeah, you bought live resin ones.
Yeah, but who are they by?
Lost Farms.
Lost Farms, okay.
But we have Afternoon Delight does hash rosin gummies, and so those people come in and they're like, holy moly, like those things were like, they taste a little bit more weedy, but we love them, and they're like full spectrum.
They're not bad though. He keeps a good flavor. They do taste more like cannabis because they're naturally gonna with what they have in them. But he does a good job with the flavor.
I used to see people come in and be like, I want a gummy that doesn't taste like weed, and I'm like, well, you're eating weed. Yeah. So, okay, I'll try my best. But at the end of the day, all your distillate gummies are starting to taste nothing like weed. And so but they're coming in and they're like, I want a full spectrum gummy. And I'm like, yay. Yeah, you want full spectrum gummies? I will help you. So it was cool to see, full spectrum, right, where they're using like resins. And now they're coming out with rosin gummies. And that is just like even cooler to me, because I'm like, this is the cleanest thing in the world.
Which we're actually going to, in part two, because I think we're going to wrap up in a sec here. In part two, we're going to actually talk about the difference of the rosin products for edibles, carts, and dabs, and a little bit about how they're made. So
before we sign off, I just want he's just got to zoom in on some of these concentrates.
Can we do a zoom here?
Oh yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Look at how pretty.
Yeah, that looks like some good batter right there.
That is a Redbud Root strawberry guava, and smells so beyond good. And then you're looking at,
oh my gosh,
what I love about these companies when they're doing rosin is they do like collabs with some of the best grows in Michigan. So it's like, Peninsula Gardens by 3 Lefts. Yeah, pretty.
That's exactly what they're doing here in Colorado too. So like Dialed In will take the best of the best rosin that we have around the state, and they're making edibles with high-end rosin. And they're going to taste hashy, but what they're also doing now is they're blending terpenes with the strain with the flavoring from the edible. So you'll have like
strain
the citrus.
Specific.
Yes. Exactly. So it's like
I love those Dialed Ins.
Yeah, so it's like
pretty.
You're getting both. You're getting the terpenes combined with this, candy flavor, and it's like best of both worlds here.
Well, you're seeing like, MKX came out with their hash rosin gummy recently, and I was like, what are they going to do to this rosin gummy? But it's pressure packed by North Coast rosin, which is like some of the best grow and one of the best processors for rosin. And I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And then they did a strain that was like grape diesel, and then did it was almost like it was peanut butter breath, and then like a grape gummy. So it was like, oh my God, it's like a PB&J, right? So they're just coming out with these really cool, it's not just,
I love that.
This is a hybrid, a watermelon gummy that has rosin in it. It is like strain specific. So you can like be like, oh, that strain is really really good for XYZ. You know, you can't have 1 billion of them, but at the end of the day, like, it's just really cool to see that our
and
market
they're
head
mixing
there.
The strains in there?
No. It's just one.
Okay.
It's one strain per like flavor. So it's just something like, you know, they have DJ Short Blueberry, and then the gummy's a blueberry gummy. So it's like, this just makes sense.
And I noticed too, when I'm eating solventless gummies, that I have to eat a lot less than when I'm just eating a distillate edible.
Yep.
So I'll eat a whole entire pack of like distillate edibles, 100 milligrams, 50 to 60 milligrams of hash rosin gummies, like gets me feeling like that or even more.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it's amazing. It's that full spectrum. It's that full plant matter. Yeah. So, all right, well, we're going to probably wrap this series up, and we're going to jump back into how it's made and all the more fun stuff coming up here soon. So,
yeah, we'll see you next week. We're going to go over about 6 or 7 more topics that you're going to love. We're going to dive into it in detail. So, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you back in a bit.
We'll see you, Ryan.
Ryan
Rosin.
Ryan.
Dot Rosin. There we go.
Follow on Ryan.Rosin on Instagram. Yeah.
I can't talk.
Oh, neither one of us can. All right, we'll see you next, guys.